Year 10, you're going to need a new file, just with the cube in the middle of it, and we're going to keep that cube there for now. Before we do any editing of these primitive shapes, we're going to just test our skills a little bit. And if you're struggling with this video, and you go through it, come back to this point and watch carefully. Otherwise, you can kind of skip to the end and have a look at the final outcome of what it's going to look like. Because what I'd like you to do is to replicate what I'm about to do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scale this along the x-axis 2 times. Oops. So I'm going to hit S to scale, hit X to do that, and I'll scale it along the x-axis 2 times. Then I'm going to add another cube here. I'm going to move this one to the right 2 times. So that's G, Y in this case, or if I should probably view it that way, moving it that way. You can also turn this bit on, hold control and move things that way. I'm going to duplicate that, Shift D, and when I duplicate it, I've got that free lock. I can hit Y and hold control and move it back to here. So I've got this kind of shape. Then I'm going to add in a mesh. I'm going to add in a cone, and this cone here I'm going to turn down to be 4 vertices, actually 5 vertices. No, 4 vertices, and that's talking of vertices along the bottom. I'm going to move it up so that it sits on top, move it across, and it's perfectly there. I'm going to add another cone, add mesh cone. This one is going to have 16. I'm going to move that so that it sits here and here. I'm going to add a cylinder, add mesh cylinder. This one is going to have 8 sides, and I'm going to move that up. I'm also going to move it along one that way, so it sits on there. I'm going to add another mesh. This one is going to be an icosphere, but I'm going to turn the subdivisions down to 2. I'm going to move it along one and move it up so that it sits on there, like that. Now what I'm going to do is, again, add mesh. I'm going to add a cone. I'm going to move this cone out this way. However you do this part is up to you. Y90. I'm going to plug that cone onto that surface. It should be exactly on the surface, so it shouldn't be spaced out. And I'm going to scale it by 0.5, like that. And then I'm going to move it into the surface again. Now, you'll notice that that doesn't quite work. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit G to grab it, hit X so it only moves along the x-axis, and move it by 0.5, negative. And that'll position it directly on there. There are other ways to do that. And then I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to move it along the y-axis. I'm going to move it into there, and then duplicate again, move it along the y-axis like that. So I've got this here. I'm going to add in a mesh. It's going to be a cube. I'm going to scale this cube by 0.5. I'm going to move it up individual increments. And I'm going to position it halfway in there. There is no reason why you can't have something stuck inside something else. It's not a problem to do that. And then what I'm going to do is add a mesh. And you'll notice that I've got all these other things down here. You don't need to worry about that at the moment. I'm going to add in a UV sphere. It's going to have 16 segments. It's going to have 8 rings. Hit enter. And its radius is going to be just the default radius. I'm going to move that out the back here, up, and sit that on top of that there. So this here is the final thing that you should have. And all we've done is manipulate, it's not anything by the way, all we've done is manipulate some shapes. Now I'm going to do a few more things here. Add mesh, torus, because I want you to get the used to rotating stuff. I'm going to isolate this torus. Now you'll see the torus has outside bits. It's got bits going around. It's got a certain number there. I'm actually going to delete that torus because what I want to do is I'm going to show you how this torus works in a sec. I will just hide all of this so that when I add the torus, it's the only thing that you see. Just so I can show you how this one works. The major segments are the bits that go around the outside, like this. The minor segments are how many I've got going over it. So I'm going to turn these minor segments down to 8. I'm going to turn the major segments down to 6, like this. And I don't think I can turn the radius of that down like that. Right, now what I've done with this here is I've made a little shape, and I am going to now unhide everything. So Alt H will unhide everything. Oops, I hit the wrong button then. Alt H, unhide everything. I'm going to move that torus up. Not that. I want the torus. I can't see it, but I can select it over here. I'm going to move that torus up along the x-axis. I'm going to move it up above everything. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to move it 1 unit, and I'm going to rotate it along the x-axis 90 degrees. Then I'm going to select both of these things here. I'm actually going to show you something new. I'm going to select both of these things here and right click and join. Those are now one object. I'm going to add a modifier. Add a modifier. This is going to be an array modifier. And I'm going to turn the count up to, well, I can turn it up to a decent number, 5 or 6. And you see I've got what looks like a chain, but it doesn't quite look right. It's because where it's arraying it from or making a duplicate from is this point here, the bounds of the object. But I'm actually going to change it here so that it comes in like that. And I think it looks like I want it to be about 0.65. That looks about right there. Of course, if I was going to make a proper chain object, I would make it a little bit better than this. You can hold shift to be a little bit more accurate, and that's probably pretty good there. So I've got a chain object. And if you have played a game like World of Warcraft, you will know that this is pretty much how they make the big fat chains in like Blackrock Depths, Molten Core, that kind of stuff. It's very much like this. In fact, they're even more low poly than this here. So this is what you should have when you're done. Notice that if I move this around, all of the chains go with it. And once you've done that, you can show that to your teacher and they'll check that it is exact. And if it's not, you may have to start again, especially if you've made some mistakes here or added everything to the same object. Notice that each of these are the same object. Are different objects. I can click on each one, except for this up the top here, it's all one object because the only two things that exist here at the start, everything else is arrayed off of that.